Docking request accepted.
Good morning, New Eden. Today is June. It's June. I can't believe it's June. June 1st, 2025. I also cannot believe it's 2025. Everybody asks me, like, oh, it was 2004. I was like, yeah, like 5 years ago, right? And they're like, no, dude, like 20 fucking 1 years ago. Anyways, I am your host, Frozen Fallout. My co-host here is Night Flyer. How's it going, man?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yeah, things are going great. I've had a fantastic week. We've had a lot of awesome fleets. Faction Warfare is rolling.
We've been doing really good.
We have taken over. We took over Tama. We took over. We were talking about taking over Sujarento last shift.
Sujarento is
we
done.
Took over Tama.
Yeah, Tama.
This was about to fall, and then the Tauros will finally be broke free. So
yes, yep. No, I already have
our mission.
I have a freelance job up for larges, and I'm gonna get mediums and smalls and novices into there. Where I like the freelance job system. I have to say that a lot of people bitching about the freelance job system right now, and I'm just like.
The only thing to bitch about is not clicking on that you're going to do the job.
Well, okay. So definitely the job system is very good for the acceptee of the job. It is not very good for the person who is putting the job out unless they have ulterior motives besides making money or finding ways to make money much in the future off of you. But we are here to do an interview, one of the people that I met at FanFest, and we always get some really great, awesome interviews out of FanFest, and so we have with us Activor Faust. How's it going, man? Did I get that right? I might have missed it.
Yeah, you got that right.
Oh, I did it! Yes!
It's 23:10 here, so it's late night in the UK where I am, but it's great to be on the show.
Awesome! Thank you for coming on, man. And yeah, this is you're over in the Euro time zone, so coming on late night. This is a late night talk show. Actually, we're 5 p.m. in the States, but this is a Euro talk show, late night talk show. So welcome on, and tell us, how did you get into EVE Online?
Well, I've been playing since launch day. I mean, that's why I might consider myself a notable character. I started playing the game on the day that it launched back in 2000.
Really? So the day they launched, but not beta.
2003.
Not beta.
2003, yeah.
So May of 2003.
Yeah, May 2003. My character was created at 5:21 in the afternoon. Server time on
wow, you got it down to the second. Nice.
Down to the minute. So I imagine that I sort of rushed home from work when I was a lot younger. Would have been 6:20 in the UK in the afternoon in May. It was after the summertime comes into effect. So I started playing the game on launch day. I actually found out about it about a month before, but the beta for EVE closed before launch. It didn't run like modern games. The betas tend to run right up to launch, right? But back in 2003, that wasn't it.
Yeah,
the beta stopped about a month before launch, so I didn't play in beta, unfortunately.
So I was in the beta. I was in the beta for like 5 minutes, where I looked around and I was like, "This is fucking crazy. I'll deal with this later." And so because we were all looking, because in 2003 I was a poor. I don't know how old you were, but I was like 7, 8, 18. So 2003. I would be 19 years old, poor as fuck, living in a small little town in the middle of Wisconsin, and we were just looking for betas. We were just all looking to try and find whatever we could. I would be 18 at the time, because this was because in May of that year is when I would have turned 19. So I definitely I was all looking around at betas and stuff like this, and like watching Master of Orion 3 while it was developing. So how close were you watching EVE Online at this point? Because it sounds like you jumped in
Yeah, so
right
then-
away.
I did. You're 10 years younger than me, so I was 29 when I started playing. I'd been playing another game before called Earth and Beyond, which was
I know Earth and
Westward.
Beyond. Yep, I know Earth and Beyond. Actually, I got to play that
Westward
in
Space
high
MMO,
school.
but not really an MMO, right? It was kind of a simulated MMO. It was a sort of small sandbox game with some multiplayer sessions.
Right. You got enhancements for joining up with people. You could join up with people, but they didn't really have like any PvP or any kind of like real interaction with the other players besides doing missions with them. I played the hell out of my favorite story about that is when I was in high school. I was hanging out. I was in Comtech, and I'm pretty sure this is my second senior year. Long story, I won't get into it. But I'm like sitting there like playing Earth and Beyond in my communication technologies class, and my teacher comes over and he looks at me and sees what I'm doing, doesn't say a thing because I'm doing a lot of 3D Visual Studio, like taking CAD programs and making it 3D, and I'm just like, dude, I'm just like researching 3D programs. Like he didn't understand what the hell was going on. But he looks over, he goes one step down, and he looks over at this other chick's like computer, and she's like playing Snood, which is this like, you know, like old school like game where you like shot stuff with this little Snood thing, whatever. It's like obviously like little like, you know, 2D game. And he's like, you can't play video games, and like he walks out, he leaves, and cause like, he always like left us to do our own devices. And I'm just laughing my ass off. And she like looks over at me and she's like, you're playing a video game, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I'm playing a really cool video game. You're not playing cool enough video games. Like, you gotta get away. To get away with this, you gotta have 3D art. And also, Walking in Stations was completed by Earth and Beyond in 2003, 2002, before EVE Online ever even thought about it's like so sad because it had like walking in stations.
I vaguely remember it had some kind of social hub where you could like hang out with other players and your avatar was in there, but it was pretty janky, right? And I'd always been interested in sci-fi, so I was like looking around for an alternative sci-fi game, and when I saw EVE covered in a magazine, like a paper magazine at the time called PC Gamer here in the UK, and they had a story that they ran pre-launch, and I was like, this looks really cool, and that's when I jumped on it. I was kind of waiting for it to arrive. I already had the box product on launch day. I had it installed on my old Dell PC that I had at the time, and you know, when launch day came around, I was ready to go and playing from the first day the game came out, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, so take us on the journey. What was the thing that initially grabbed you in EVE Online?
I mean, it looked beautiful, right? To say, well, you look back at screenshots or videos from the early days of the game now, and you think it looks awful in comparison to the modern graphics. But the early game was kind of groundbreaking when it came out. It looked so beautiful.
It's still groundbreaking. I don't know of any other game that, like, I mean, the thing is, the joke is, right, is that you pull out from EVE, right, in order to see it to get a tactical view. Have you ever played Homeworld? Or any tactical game that you pull out, like if you play Crusader Kings, there are no graphics. This is a fucking map, man, and like a little visual, like not even like a visual of the battle, just like of two pictures, static pictures of like armies that don't even match what your army looks like. Like EVE Online, yeah, you pull out, it looks like fucking any other game that you just turn off all the graphics because you want to know what the fuck's going on. You're not looking at how cool it looks, you're like, I want to know information. But EVE has that, but then you zoom in and man, these ships look like the art department has never been yelled at by the player base. I don't think I can't remember a like riot in EVE regarding like, you look at all evil, like or dumb this or bad this looks, like this is, you know, like you fucked up on you know, like we make fun of Mimitar ships, right? But you know, like they still look pretty fucking cool, man. Duct tape goes a long way.
Even more so now with the recent redesign. But yeah, so the first thing I'd say was, yeah, this kind of looks beautiful, and it had this kind of weird combination of chill activities, like mining, you know, was the only really PvE activity when the game first came out, which was kind of chill, and then you sort of counterbalance that against this sort of high adrenaline, high intensity, lose everything PvP game. And those two things, I think, are a kind of interesting combination, but I got hooked on it pretty much straight away when I started playing.
Did you ever play or hear of Ultima Online?
I did, but I didn't play Ultima Online. I played like a lot of RTS games, then I played Earth and Beyond, and then I played Eve. That was really like how I got into it more from RTS. I gave a talk. I gave a talk not at this fan fest, but at last fan fest. So when was that? Back in 2023, September 2023. I gave a talk where I talked in player presentations where I talked a lot about early game and kind of how it differed from the modern game that we play today. And there was some really like basic mechanics in the early game. You know, there was no large scale PvP, there was no logi, there were very few activities other than mining and PvP. The industrial side of the game wasn't fleshed out, but it was still great fun, and I still loved it from the very beginning. You know, so even though it was very, very basic compared to the modern game,
the potential
I still thought it was great. Even
was really there. Like, what was your feeling of like? So one of the things that I feel like is one of the big things about EVE Online is not just that there's an economy that's different than everything. It's that the economy is affected by distance from where you are. Like, where you live is so important in EVE Online. That it's like it's nothing like I've ever experienced in. I don't live anywhere in any other game. You know, maybe like Minecraft, right? Like you build a house, and then, you know, like that's and that's on a different level than what EVE allows you kind of do that with after houses and, you know, like passes, stuff like that. You can kind of like make your own little house kind of thing. But where you live in EVE is like so important. Whereas like in World of Warcraft or any other MMORPG that I can really think of, like where you live didn't matter. Like
what's kind of interesting is they've kind of reversed it in EVE, haven't they? You know, when you started in WoW, they kind of caved. Because you used to have to travel to instances manually, right? And they kind of caved and put in meeting stones. They put in looking for raid and all that other stuff into the game over the years, which meant if you want content, you can just teleport to it. The opposite has happened in EVE. When EVE was released, there was a superhighway in HiSec that would get you around the regions very much more quickly than you can today. And at some patch while I was taking a break, they ripped that out and introduced distance to HiSec. And then with the Trig event, which I again missed because I was on a break, but the Trig event also broke up some of the traditional routes and made them very much longer and very much more risky. But the thing that has never changed is if you're living in Null, you need a logistics chain to get you from the trade hub at Jita, right, out to wherever your staging is or wherever your alliance is out in nullsec, and the same to a lesser extent with low-sec alliances. But you're right, most games have collapsed distance down to nothing over time through design changes, and EVE's kind of gone the other way. The only thing that's kind of similar to it is survival crafters, you know, where you have a base and you live in that base, and if you lose that base you can get reset back to day one in some of them. But it's quite different in EVE, right? You've got industrial logistics, you've got PvP logistics, you've got the idea of staging, you've got deployments. It's very much more complex, you know, and I didn't, I guess, realize when I joined Shadow Cartel, which is the alliance that I play, and we'll talk about that a bit more later, how important where we're located is. We're in a location that allows us to project. By taking one Stargate jump from our home, we can project into very different areas of the map. So whoever chose that location obviously put a ton of thought into it, because our home station is strategically located to give us projection. It's kind of interesting if you look where we are on the map.
Right, no, that's a huge thing, because you take into like being able to jump, being able to like access different areas of the map differently than, because you know, it's a three-dimensional map. It's not a 2D map. It's not. It has the whole concept of where you are, how distant you are. You know, not just how many jump gates it takes in order to get to somewhere. And that's, you know, it adds in a lot of different kind of aspects of like being able to get resources from Jita is important. You have to know how many jumps it is for your jump freighter, how far, you know, how much you have to spend in order to just do that activity. But so
if you want to do that safely, you probably need midpoints. You probably need to defend those midpoints. You probably need to replace them when they get blown up, because they do get blown up. So you know, you've got all that kind of logistics metagame, and you know, to even add another layer of complexity to it, you've got dynamic travel with wormholes, you've got N944s, low sec to low sec dynamic paths, you've got S199s, which is low sec to null sec dynamic pathing. So, if you want to get around fast, you can map wormholes and scan them and find dynamic routes, but they're constrained in terms of time that they're live for, and also constrained in terms of mass, right? So if you really want to invest time and you've got a large organization, you can use those wormholes to great effect, but you have to put the time in to map them. It's like you're getting something back for the effort you invest in mapping those dynamic connections.
Right, no, absolutely. And so what would you say that your biggest passion as you started like developing your understanding of EVE Online, what was the thing that like really kept you playing this game?
So I've had a couple of long breaks. I played for like 2.5 years at the beginning of the game. I took a longish break. I played for like 2.5 years around 2015, 2016. I took another long break and then I came back after COVID, and this is my longest period of contiguous play, right? I've played since 2020, so coming up to 5 years contiguous in one block. And I'd say that the things that I've done during those periods have been quite different. At the beginning, a lot of the systems weren't there, and I was in a kind of an alliance, which is a corporation, which was one of the earliest corporations in the game, a corporation called Taggart Transdimensional.
Oh,
and there were a small
oh man, there's so much storied history behind that corporation.
Yeah, there is.
Aren't you guys the guys that fucked with? There was a whole thing about the North, right? And Jade Constantine and like crazy, like that's like you guys were the center of controversy of 2003, 2004, 2003, 2004, right? Like,
yes, that's right. Yeah, early in the game, we
lots of talk about. Yeah, maybe have you read or listened to the Empires of Eve?
No, I have not.
Dude, you guys are talking about that a lot. There's
really?
like
that's really interesting. So
huge, like
the
3 chapters dedicated to you. I
really? Wow, I'm gonna listen. The most
Yeah.
important thing to say though is I was not in the leadership role in that corp. I was like a minor player in that corp. I was part of their PvP organization, and there weren't a lot of PvPers in there. We were part of Curse Alliance with Shinra, with another corporation called Arcane Technologies, with Black Omega Security, and with a couple of other corps. So we were an early alliance before the alliance structure was in the game. We were in a regional alliance called Curse Alliance. I was involved in that, but I was really a line member and interested in PvP more than anything else. And then I took a break. I played World of Warcraft for a few years, as you might have guessed. I came back in 15, 16, and the player organizations that I'd been part of had dissolved while I'd been away. And it's at this point that I joined Shadow Cartel. Again, I joined as a sort of line member, very low ranked in the organization. Again, I was really interested in small gang, in like PvP, but obviously we were fighting over strategic objectives in low sec, so I got involved in more fleet combat. And then I took a break again because of my RL job. I was out of the game for a few years, and then I came back after COVID. And when I came back after COVID, Shadow Cartel was reactive. They'd been inactive for a couple of years, or mostly inactive for a couple of years. And I started getting quite seriously into industry as well as PvP when I returned to the game. And there's a backstory behind this. So when I came back in 2020, some guys that I'd been playing with really early in the game, in TTI actually, back in 2003, and then again in my second stint, they'd accumulated quite a lot of Tech 2 BPOs. But they'd all quit the game, and all of these Tech 2 BPOs were locked up in an industrial corp in high sec, and I can access those Tech 2 BPOs, but only for copying.
Oh,
so I started with industry in 2020 in Tech 2 manufacturing using that BPO library, but I've got into Tech 2 manufacturing in quite a big way now, and I do a lot of Tech 2 module and ship production as well as PvP, and that's what kind of funds my PvP habit. And I've accumulated quite a lot of in-game wealth over the last 5 years as a result of scaling my industry operations. This is what we're talking about at FanFest. I was talking about Tech 2 production with you, what some of the challenges are in large-scale Tech 2 production, kind of how low-sec producers compare to producers that are building at scale in null or in wormholes, what some of the structure issues are if you're in a corporation alliance like Shadow Cartel, where we can't really deploy medium and large structures and expect them to live for a long period of time. It's kind of an interesting thing to do, but I eke out a pretty good in-game living from large-scale T2 manufacturing now. That's what I do in the game as well as PvP.
Interesting. So what would you say that one of the things that, because it sounds like you deal with a large component of getting a lot of materials in the game, do you use do you focus on trying to get all those materials yourself, or are you dependent on a market system?
No, so I think to be a successful industrial producer in Eve, you have to have vertical integration, to steal the real world term for this stuff. So you have to have control over your supply chain. And if you're buying stuff on the market, you're paying production cost plus tax at every step, because there's no like mechanism within the game for tax rebates like exists within the real world, right? If you're buying product in the real world to manufacture it, then you've got tax write-offs, tax incentives,
Right,
to do that.
Yep.
Those don't exist in Eve, right?
Eve,
It's all retail.
paying straight up tax. So that's,
you're
5%
paying
is
at
like
retail.
the best that you can do.
Yeah, you're paying at retail, so you've got to vertically integrate in order to be effective in terms of profitability. And the way that I do that is by buying moon materials either in Alliance or on the market, shipping moon materials, running my own reactions integration chain, and then doing a lot of PI and then integrating those things together to produce a finished product. So most Tech 2 products require a Tech 1 input, a robotic assembly module, a RAM, which you'll know about, I guess, and they require a combination of moon materials and advanced components, of PI and advanced components, which are made from moon materials. So you've got a lot of logistics. You can be shipping around small volume but high value moon materials. You can be shipping around pretty high volume, pretty high value PI products, putting those things together in a station somewhere and then shipping them to market. So there's a lot of, freighting, jump freighting, and a lot of production complexity that goes with that as well, and a lot of inventory that gets held if you're doing it at any kind of scale as well. You're going to have, like I have, hundreds of billions of manufacturing inventory sitting around in various stations that are in the chain from raw materials to finished product.
And that's one of the things I find interesting about Eve, is that there's this whole area of industry that is open to like problems. Do you ever have any like logistical problems of stuff getting blown up along the way, or having to figure out how to get around gankers? Because it sounds like you move a lot of like product. And that's like highway bandits is something that we don't deal with in the real world. And we deal with that in Eve, right?
Yeah, so I mean, before I had jump freighters, then my losses were a significant component of my life in Eve, and I've got quite a few notable deep space transport losses that are in the multi-billions, where I've lost either product or raw materials going in one direction or another to and from the locations where I make stuff. But now I've got into jump freightering in quite a big way. I've got more than one jump freighter. I know how to move them. I've become a little bit more skilled at that, having lost one earlier in my jump freighter career. I've not had another loss on a jump freighter since then. And obviously I'm moving them around with... Yeah, I'm moving them around with characters that aren't known, that certainly aren't Shadow Cartel characters, and that certainly aren't really known characters. So yeah, it's a risky thing, but you can do it in a safe way. I think one thing that is a little unfortunate is it's very hard to be safe with logistics if you're a solo player and you don't have more than one account, or you don't have another player that you can really trust. I feel like there are some mechanics that inadvertently or maybe advertently require multi-boxing, and moving safely is one of those mechanics that probably shouldn't really, but does actually require you to have multiple characters.
And I would say that there's like a debate about that kind of structure of like being able to jump requires you to have two characters, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your character, but do you trust the person that's jumping you? Like, is this person that you just met online and they're in the same alliance, or are they somebody that you've talked to and hang out with and you know them, or can you throw a brick through their window? And a brick through the window usually gets you to the point of like, all right, I know where you live. Like, I mean, you can have real life disputes with people, but it's usually very less likely to have a problem. Hep says, trust no one but yourself. It is hard to give out director roles to people. It's circles of trust, isn't it? I don't know. What's that movie? Like, are you in the circle of trust? Are you out of the circle of trust? But what is that? Meet the Parents.
It's meet the Parents. Yeah, I mean, the Shadow Cartel Alliance leaders coming to my wedding in a few weeks. So There are definitely people in the game that I trust, which, by the way, is why my kill board's a bit flat at the moment. I'm getting married in 5 weeks, just over 5 weeks.
Oh, congratulations!
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of busy with that. But Shadow Cartel Alliance leader is coming to my wedding. There are people in the alliance that I would trust with my assets. I've lent people tens of billions of ISK and got it back, no problem. So I don't have a problem finding people in the game that I can trust. It's just when I have the logistics thing that I need to do, are they around? Are they available? Do I want to pre-plan it? Probably not. I kind of tend to go spur of the moment, and I like to be in control of my own logistics. So for that reason, I tend to kind of DIY. I'll do it myself, but yeah, certainly there's people in the game that I would trust with assets. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, and is this people that you've met through the game, and it was a relationship built up through the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've met a lot of people through the game. I think this is something again we were talking about at FanFest. I think undoubtedly one of the best aspects of this game is the community around it, where we can kind of hate on each other in the game, but be buddies when we meet in real life. And you can certainly develop relationships in video games, and particularly in Eve, that are meaningful in the real world. They're not just like people that you play a video game with. There's a little bit more to it than that, and that's something that I really like about this community, actually.
Yeah, it's something that I would say
100%.
like meeting up with Nightflyer and stuff like that, like was all due to me, like EVE Online community type kind of interactions, because we met up through the Goon Swarm meetup, and like he wasn't Goons. I don't think I was Goons at that time. I think I was I was doing the Federation Frontline at that point, and like it doesn't matter. We were hanging out with throughout all of FanFest. We were hanging out with November, right? Like, and November was a big PL dude, and we were hanging out with the goons the whole time, and they were just getting him drunk as fuck. Like, they were loving up on him, man. They were.
Yeah, this FanFest was my fourth, and it was a good one. I mean, I was hanging out with a guy from Snuff called Yar's Revenge, who actually used to be in Shadow, but is now in Snuffed Out.
Okay, yeah.
As well as a couple of people. They're absolutely our arch enemies in the game, right? We kind of hate on each other. We try to double cross each other. We try to one up each other and trick each other, and blap their dreads in Tama with our Talos fleet or whatever we can to try and get to score a few points against them. But when you meet in person, that's kind of forgotten, and you can sort of put that to one side and be buddies, and then play the game like you've never met the next time you meet each other in space. I think that's a cool aspect of the game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's one of the. There's real loss in Eve, but there is real like friendship in Eve, and even enemies become friends in Eve. Like,
yeah,
me and Corvus, whenever we hang out at FanFest, he's the big Caldari streamer. I'm the Federation streamer, the Galente streamer, and like we're like, yeah, I love you, man. Like. So tell us though. So you said you've been at. Oh, go ahead, Nightflyer.
I was just gonna say, just wanted to throw that out that both you and I in real life are friends with Alexei Picard, who's in Noir, who's part of Shadow Cartel Alliance that way. So again, and those are all meetings of friendships that started just through the game.
Yes. Yeah.
So he just came up to Madison for the Madison meetup, after the Eve FanFest after party. We had a chance to hang out with him for a bit, so
that's cool. Again, yeah, there were one or two other Noir people in Iceland. There was another member of Noir there from LA that I met, so it was cool to meet him. They're kind of new to Shadow Cartel. They've only been in Alliance about 8 weeks, I think, but definitely doing some good stuff. Participating in our timer-based gameplay, and we also are working with them on some of their mercenary stuff as well. So it seems like a good matchup. That.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun. It feels like ever since that Noir has gotten into Shadow Cartel, like we've had a lot of really good workings with the Shadow Cartel lately. Not, one of my favorite things in Eve was working with Shadow Cartel to drop on the Tama nerve gate security bitches. you know, basically snuff. We dropped on Snuff together, and it was like one of those moments where I was like, "Where's my backup?" We had like we were holding. We had just lost a Brutix. We had just killed one of their Logi. They had just dropped Dreads. I was screaming for
Yeah, we're
backup.
going down fast.
We're probably gonna start going down fast. And I'm like, "Where's our backup?" And one of my fleet mates goes, "You got tricked, man. They ain't gonna come. They just fed you to the wolves." And all of a sudden, a Sino lights. And like 50 fucking Shadow Cartel just dropped. Yeah, and it's like, yep, all right, we're good. Don't worry. This is it. We're good. Like, you know, it worked out. We lost one Brutix and we killed like 3 fucking capitals. It was pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, occasionally we get one up on those guys, and there's a lot of cheering in TeamSpeak when we do it. You know, so yeah, it's good.
So tell us, what are some of the projects that you're working on currently? What's your current passion in EVE Online? So it's been what, 20 plus years?
22 years.
22 years.
22 years. Yeah. So I mean, acquiring shiny toys and ticking up my net worth is something that I spend quite a lot of time on. I've got a Super and a Titan that I acquired in the last 5 years. Sadly, they don't get a lot of use, but I'm sort of working on fitting them in a little bit more of an exotic way. And then the second thing is like trying to do more. I said in my FanFest talk in 2023, I think one of the reasons that the game's had so much longevity for me is that I've never been in any kind of leadership role. I've never had any responsibility in the game. I did in WoW, you know, lead a guild and then have some responsibility in a higher end guild that I was part of in World of Warcraft. But when I returned to EVE and then when I started playing EVE in 2020, I deliberately didn't take on any of that responsibility. I have quite a responsibility in my real world job, and I've been like an org leader in some reasonably big companies in my roles. So I kind of stay away from that, but I have been trying to be more active in kind of playing a supporting role in the Alliance with things like mapping, and just generally trying to help out and be kind of somebody that can shoulder some of the burden that leadership have. There's a lot of work involved in running alliances in EVE. I'm sure you know this. Like NullSec Alliance leaders, I think, are like in a full-time job as well as the full-time job they probably have in real life. And even for a smaller entity like Shadow, there's quite a lot of, you know, behind-the-scenes stuff that needs to happen. So I try to help with that. We've got some tools that we use within our alliance that are kind of unique. I won't say too much about them, but I kind of try and help with feedback and improvements on the tools. We've got one person that does a lot of software development for us on tooling, so I try to help with that. And then I guess the other goals I have are kind of filling out my hangar with all of the stuff that I want to see in there. I'd quite like to buy into some faction dreads, but I'm already somebody that has multiple capitals and multiple capital alts, so there's kind of not a lot of goals left in the game for me in terms of acquisition. It's more like how can I help out in the organization that I'm part of, really, I'd say.
And that's one of the things that's kind of a level up that's kind of different than World of Warcraft or other games. Because I mean, leadership is always a thing in every video game. There's leadership, right? But like the amount of experience that it takes to be a good leader in EVE is interesting, because even after 20 years of like experiencing EVE, you know, I'm like a you know, lower tier leader. You know, like there's some crazy shit. Like the big thing is the like infrastructure, like you were talking about. Like there's different roles, like you got to have like the server, the forms, the different applications that you're applying to, like, you know, searching for spies, searching for, you know, like information regarding people. Like there's API like digs that you're doing into like different things. Like there's like one of my buddies, you know, who jumped into EVE Online works for like the, you know, government in like a Wood County or like a courthouse. And so they, you know, like he's like, dude, this place, like this has got way better IT than the government.
There's more vetting. There's probably more there's probably more vetting to get into some EVE Online alliances and corporations than there is to get government jobs in some countries. And I'm not joking about that. I feel like the level of vetting that happens is kind of,
it's up there,
kind of extreme. Yeah, it is. Yeah, so that's a factor. The other thing that kind of, even though I've been playing for 22 years, something that always shocks me is like how many mechanics there are to know. You know, how many nuances there are. I
And how
honestly
much
am
it
in awe of.
changes actually over time.
Yeah, yeah, like you're going into a fleet fight, people have got encyclopedic knowledge of weapon systems, ranges, resists, fittings, jump distances for different types of capital. They know it all, right? I just feel like how do these fleet leaders, these organizational leaders get all this information into their brains? I kind of struggle with it. Maybe it's because I'm getting old, but I feel like having all of that and being able to command it all and kind of recall it when you need it in every situation is kind of a special skill. And I don't think there are too many games that demand that level of knowledge. Maybe the only other one that I can think of that's similar is Tarkov, like Escape from Tarkov with ballistics complexity that's in that game. That's kind of on a similar level to the complexity of Eve, but I think Eve beats it out in terms of systems complexity by a few factors. You know, it's a really complicated game, and people that have command of it all are really, you know, special in quotes, let's say.
So Nightflyer, you got any questions before we kind of wrap things on up here and give like a little spotlight?
Well, I know you got into production, and I want to just ask, since it's kind of been out in the news about this Triglavian ship that maybe you've heard about with Barbaroga, and now if you've done any research or been able to profit off of any of the...
I haven't, because I try to vertically integrate my chains, right? So how would I do that when I don't do a lot of... I know there's a few ways to get those components. One of them is Abyss, and another way is something you can do in HiSec that a few select people know about, or let's say do by a Triglavian wormhole that a few select people know about, but I'm not going to spoil that. But I would say there's a guy in Shadow Cartel called Faust, and he was actually also at FanFest, and I do know that he has successfully manufactured several of those new Trig Marauders by doing a lot of materials farming and vertically integrating and inventing his own BPCs. But again, this is an area where Losec is kind of at a disadvantage. So before he could get his Barbarossas are they called, to market, the market was already stocked, because obviously there's a speed advantage for people manufacturing and researching in wormholes and in null, which we don't benefit from in Losec. So, you know, it's hard to compete when being first to market is the key in the way that it is with something like a new ship, let's say.
Well, that's one of the things that you can make an insane... I know that when I was, when they released the Navy Dreads, I was able to make an insane amount of money
from LP.
Being one of the first people to sell to 0.0 guys that were like, oh, hey, you're somebody that's got a name, you do faction warfare, do you have the ability to give us some BPCs? And if I had more like reserved, which is something I've learned in this game, is like just save up your shit sometimes, and then eventually that thing that is worth nothing will be worth something way more than it is for like a week, and then it's gone.
Look at Trig components and Leshak blueprints. Didn't Trig components go up 400% over the course of the last few weeks because people were stockpiling them to build those Marauders? Didn't Leshak blueprints pretty much triple in price?
Right.
Because people wanted them for invention. And didn't the first one of those Marauders sell for like 20 bill when they cost about 6 to build? So, you know, you can see that the profit's there for people that have got either inside knowledge or are able to read the signals and react quickly. It's kind of interesting that the market spikes like that. It's like, you know, insider trading in the real world in many ways, isn't it?
It is. It's interesting, but a lot of that is, as long as it's public information. And the thing is that I think we're way more transparent in Eve about what the fuck's going to happen with the market than the people running the market in the real world. Like, you know, in the real world, we're just like, it's all about like cloak and dagger and figuring out like
CCP themselves have got a lot. CCP themselves have got a lot better in controlling information as well. So they're a lot more careful now about when they release information about what changes are going to be, and doing that in a more equitable way than they might have done in the distance past.
Right, and part of it is part of the game of like, it's okay to like kind of try and make a bunch of money off of the market. Like when a new item drops, like obviously people are going to pay way more for day 1 than they're going to pay for day 55. Like that's just,
Yeah.
like that's any item in the real world. That's just the way that it fucking works, dude. Like
Yeah,
except
yeah, of
for
course it is.
the one thing that I have to say is it's just really weird like side tangent. How are video games still $60? All like it's just like $60 like all throughout my life. It's never changed. It's been $60 for a new title game.
Yeah, but they've extended the pricing envelope with premium editions, right?
Yes,
So you can
yes, that's true. And also they've
ultimate
gotten rid of
editions.
all ability to like all cost of sending you the item. Like the item
Yeah,
just arrives
absolutely.
and you're
Yeah.
fine. Like
Yeah.
you don't need like a disc, like any kind of like shipping, like cost of moving this item from across this place to that place. Like, oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
I will say though that I wish I'd kept my CD box that I got my first edition of EVE in from 2003. It got lost sometime in
yeah.
the last 22 years moving home, but I've definitely had a copy of that sort of pinky orange first edition that they released here in the UK. I got it a couple of days before release from Amazon, Code UK here in the UK. I remember buying it, but I don't have the box anymore, and I'm kind of sad about that.
Yeah, that's
And
that's an invaluable box. What were you saying, Night Flyer?
oh, just as far as collecting stuff like that, I've got like some of the books. Yeah, but I'm probably gonna end up buying one of the video game boxes when I see one pop up. They're decent price, just for nostalgic purposes.
Yeah, I wish I'd kept mine for that exact same reason.
Yeah, I ended up getting the Rifter at the event this year. I always wanted this USB Rifter. I will never use it for its actual job of being a USB port, because it's all USB 1, so it's completely and utterly useless, but it looks fucking awesome. It is a gigantic Rifter model. I got this at the spin-off. I went into line like 3 or 4 times, I think. I only actually got through the line once, and I got that and like nothing really. A magazine. I think I got a magazine. I got Full, and I got 1,500 ever marks. Like, you ever marks. That's ridiculous. And then I
did have a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Keep going.
No, go ahead.
I just had a question about because you do a lot of industry, and I'm kind of like a novice trying to get into like a sideline of industry here. But I wanted to know if you could recommend or if you use any third-party tools that would be helpful for a aspiring industrialist.
The main thing that I have used, I don't use a lot on the industry side. The main thing that I have used is like tools for doing universe-wide market searches. So like EVE Marketeer was one that I used to use. And if I do need input materials, sometimes I'll go out and look to see whether those input materials are available anywhere in New Eden at a reduced cost. And I'm not really talking here about moon materials or PI. I'm more talking about, if I need 15,000 Tech 1 small energy neutralizers or 5,000 small armor reppers, is there somebody because those are input materials for the Tech 2 derivatives of those products, is there somebody that's offloading, that many or a large number of those particular modules in some backwater system somewhere? And if there is, I'll go and collect them, even if it's at the other side of the cluster. So that is probably the only one that I use. But I do look. Something else is like Fuzzworks invention calculators. So they can tell you whether or not it's optimal to use a decryptor with your invention jobs in order to improve efficiency, and they can calculate for you what the ROI on decryptors is if you're going to use decryptors. So for that kind of more complex calculation, I do sometimes use tools, and then I have my own like spreadsheets for PI optimization, which help me optimize my PI infrastructure because I have a lot of planets and I build everything from extraction through to some T4 materials there, but I extract a lot and build a lot of things like superconductors, robotics, miniature electronics. So I have spreadsheets that I wrote myself to optimize all that, which gather pricing and help me understand whether I should be buying materials or extracting materials to make that stuff. So that's the major tool that I've invested in myself, is like Google Sheets for PI management. It sounds kind of weird, but it's something that you can optimize quite a bit of cost with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's been probably the big problem that I've run across, trying to find those things that are more cost effective to build on your own compared to just buying it on the market.
Yeah,
Again, maybe it's a low sec problem.
Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm basically comparing what my opportunity cost is versus what the cost of buying those items on the market is, and trying to figure out what the most optimal way to do it is. But unfortunately, like many things in Eve, the thing that really scales profitability with manufacturing is scaling the number of accounts that you've got.
Yeah.
So it's large numbers of production alts. That's really what you've got to have if you want to be productive. If you've got 3 accounts and you're using them for PvP, then you've got 6 slots there that you can have manufacturing and PI on, and that's basically what I do. All of my spare slots are filled with characters that can react, that can do PI, and that can manufacture T2 materials.
And it's one thing that's really interesting about Eve is that there's this whole talk about like, oh, like if you haven't been in Eve for a long time, then you're completely useless and stuff like that. And it's like, not really, like at all. Like a bunch of my characters don't have a lot of SP, but they have a very specific thing that they need to do.
Yeah.
And if you look at it like that, you have 3 characters when you start up. If you're, instead of thinking about it as I should skill up one character to have 100 million skill points, it's like, well, yeah, eventually. But like what you should do is also take a look at like your other characters, and it depends on where they are. Like some characters you can hide away and you can say, oh, this is my hauler alt. Nobody knows who my hauler alt is. Like he is independent. He doesn't he doesn't do anything that incurs any actual taxes from an NPC corp. And if he does, I'll make my own corp or whatever. But you fly under the radar with that guy. But then you have your 0.0 guy who does this and that, and he's got war decks and problems here. Then you got like a faction warfare guy you put like 5 million skill points into just because, like. And you can make a bunch of like skill points off of this game now by just doing activities in this game, which is something that is very different than it has been way in the past. Because back in the day, it was 100%. Like if you didn't like be here in the beginning,
time, right?
You were it was time. Like that's it. Not activity. Activity meant nothing.
Like a lot of really early players, I have like multiple main characters, because at the beginning of the game, if you wanted to skill into Minmatar and autocannons and Galente and blasters, then you couldn't have MCT. You couldn't train those characters on the same MCT. You couldn't train those characters on the same account. So
right, yeah.
I've got three characters that were created in the first year that the game was released, and when I started, they had different subcapital specializations.
I always find it interesting how people are like, oh, CCP is so leaning into multi-boxers, and I'm like, I don't think you understand how much they crushed multi-boxers. Like, because back in the day, you used to just have the is box, and you just like click on one thing, and like everybody did the same thing as you. Like there were people who had like 50, 60 accounts, and it was one click, and they all fucking shot you. Like multi-boxing was like way more prevalent than it was today. Like just we're maybe older now, so we can all afford multi-boxing a little bit more. But like in itself, multi-boxing is has always been and always will be a very profitable way to handle this game. If you want to be able to do more than one thing, I mean, like it's the ability to co-locate. If you could just like all of a sudden have like 3 of you going and doing things at your command, like how are you going to say no to that? Like World of Warcraft is too complex to have multiple. Like Eve is designed to be a little bit more of a simple, complex game. It's like as you dig into it, it's very complex. But on the surface, you just click some buttons and you do some things.
Yeah, what's your take on like whether they should make design changes to make more activities higher activity. You know, like with the stuff that they put in for the Drifter event. I didn't do them, but I understand the complexes that were added were kind of hard or impossible to multi-box because they had different roles that required within them. They're not like flashpoints in Potvin where you know it's quite simple to multi-box them. You actually needed more active gameplay. Do you think that they should go towards that more with PvE? I mean, in
think
PvP it's a
I
bit
think
different,
that they
right?
should
But do you think they should go towards that more?
I think they should continue their crusade against multi-boxers. That as much as people say that CCP has always catered to multi-boxers, if you look at the history of what multi-boxers could do and what they can do today, you know, like CCP has always fought against the idea of like, we want you to be able to multi-box. Multi-box is great because it allows them to make a lot more money off of one individual than they could normally. But they also have crusaded against the concept of like, this is the end all be all of how you do this game, because in the end the game is designed to be much more, if you have 5 real humans who understand and work with each other and have worked with each other and are experienced individuals, they're gonna beat the living shit out of a multi-boxer that's running 5 multi-boxing units. They're just
Yes.
the one thing that I am against is, I don't mind that you have a bunch of people, but I think you should have to physically go click all of this shit, and you shouldn't have a third-party program that should allow you to do
totally
a bunch of shit. Like, they just
totally
now, how do you monitor that or enforce that? Just to a certain degree, you start by just banning it. Like, and then you worry about monitoring and enforcing it as you go, and you develop more and more tools and more concepts of, like, at the very least, you take out anybody that does, you know, like any YouTube videos and stuff like that of like, oh, I've got 50 accounts and I just alt tab, you know, properly through this program, like Windows and stuff like that. Like, there is I think debate in that area that is open for people to kind of talk about and be like, listen, you can't monitor this or you can't stop this, you know, so we have to allow it at this level. But at this point in time, like, the idea of like somebody being able to quickly use a third-party program to get themselves to be able to access a bunch of different accounts so that they can quickly cycle through all their shit so they can do 20 actions in 1 second, that is, like, it's not against regulations now, but I feel like eventually it should be against regulations. Like, you should, you know, like, but how much are we relying as we move forward? We're a world of automation. It's surprising how low tech our EVE Online ships are, actually. Like, you have to hit a button to scan directionally around you. That's crazy. That's not even what like sonar today is way better than our scanners. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's just been reminded again that it's a video game, not a simulation, right?
Right, yeah, and so, you know, how much do you want to lean into simulation? How much do you want to lean into a comprehensive video game that is fun to play? In general, I'm not against multi-boxing. Multi-boxing has always been in EVE, always should be in EVE. It is a fundamental thing about EVE that actually keeps it alive as a capitalist video game. If it wasn't for multi-boxing, we probably wouldn't have the EVE that we have today.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, Greedbots 4000 says that they are against multi-boxing. I mean, and I'm not saying that you're a bad person for being against. I understand the whole problem. Like, no other game really has the problem that we have. Like, very few times will you be like, oh, I played World of Warcraft and there was a guy, or Final Fantasy or any other MMORPG, and be like, well, they ran 5 accounts and just ran the game. You know, like, it does. First of all, it really doesn't happen. Second of all, you don't really give a fuck. Like, you just, you know, like, whatever. You just, you know, we're just playing a PvE game pretty much with each other. EVE is so PvP dominated that multi-boxers definitely throw things off. But I would say that this is not a new fucking problem. Like, and it's gotten way better. Like, the just, you know, like, not to be offensive, but to be offensive because I want to be offensive. The children don't understand. Like, it was way worse back in the day. Like,
I think that's a good extension that you know they bring up in chat here too. Is that, you know, the multi-boxing for in-game activities, not necessarily having multiple accounts. I think most players of Eve understand the importance of having multiple accounts. You want to have your PvP player. You want to have your utility alt. You know, you want somebody that can actually go through high section shipping without being, you know, a target to everybody. So, you know, I think those things are necessary. So, yeah, the distinction of actually having, yeah, like the home fronts, exactly. So, if you're going to have, yeah, the multi-box, especially if, you know, using like the key inputs, I think the vast majority of players, I think, are against, you know, the single key input players. I think that's really where the devastation of the game. I think it takes away from the spirit of the game.
That kind of leans into like mining. How do you like Night Flyer? How do you think about like mining? Do you think mining should be a much more complex mini game that allows you to get maybe more out of your activity for a little mini game, or do you think like the passive click a button, walk away, come back, click a button, walk away, watch TV,
But again,
do whatever
you
you
can
want?
do that, but AFK mining is, you know, it's not without peril. You know, you do that at your own risk. I've been destroyed in high sec, you know,
Yeah.
mining. There are people that will do that, and I think that's an important part of the game. We've talked about it before. I've flown with safety, and I've done those the ganking fleets, and I think it's an important part of the game because it just, you know, it emphasizes that point that you're not safe. You're not safe in this game. You undocked. You are a target. Whether you're doing AFK mining, you're right. 99 times you may go out, but it's that one time you're going to go out, and guess what? They're going to find you and they're going to shoot you, and you got to be able to defend yourself.
I think they've kind of got the balance right. You can sit there with a passive gameplay style, and your return will be less than optimal, and you're at risk of being exploded. You can take a more active gameplay style, you know, put your hulks out and they have to be emptied every 2 cycles because they've got a tiny cargo hold. You'll get great yield, but you're putting much more asset value at risk, and you need to be more active in order to get the higher yield. So it's kind of in a good spot. What I think they should do is introduce some kind of, you know, next tier up of even more expensive miner that gets an even better yield and has an even more involved gameplay loop. Maybe you've got to click every minute instead of every 2 minutes, you know, so there's opportunity to increase that continuum a bit, so you can, people that want to play it more actively could get an even better yield for more risk. I think there's plenty of opportunities to do that in the game, and not just in mining. You know, I can think of things that you could do in capitals to or super capital ships to introduce the same kind of thing, improve survivability of ships by putting more valuable assets on field. I think there's a ton of opportunity for that in game design.
Yeah, and I think if CCP has done a lot of effort in the last couple of years, especially since they got rid of Rorqual mining, and have trying to fix that balance and get us out of the you know, if you go to more hostile space, you should get a better yield than what you're going to get in high sec if you're going to carry bear mine. And you know, that makes sense. You know, risk reward is what a big part of this game is about. And now that they're making it so that you can, you know, if you have SOV, you can use that SOV to make it better for that kind of activity. So, again, I think CCP is trying to put the passive mining into a better place. So, and we got to have it because we have to have industry. If we're going to build ships, we can't blow up ships if we don't have them. So,
well, I do have to say that I talked to a lot of Horde people during Vegas of 2024, not 2004, because you know years have matters. So 2024, I was hanging out in Vegas with a bunch of Horde guys, and they were talking about, like, they were all a bunch of industry people, and they were like, well, don't you want us to be AFK? Like, don't you want us to be not caring about what's going on so that we get blown up. And so there is a whole, ecosystem that is involved in hunting miners that comes into, like, the more that we can make docile miners, the easier it is for, like, the hunters to come in and start, and so it's not about why do you be active, it's because hunters are going to come and hunt you. Like, not because you're worried about the activity that you're doing, you're worried about the other players' activity. So as a PvP game, we should be setting people up for failure. Like, make it so easy to do mining that you don't have to think about it. And then the moment you don't have to think about it, you start realizing that other players are realizing that you don't think about it, so they're going to come kill you. So it's an interesting, like, there's a balance in all of that of, like, how active do you want to force the players to be, and how docile and, like, almost domesticated do you want to make your your slaughters. And so there's just a lot to that. So we are coming up on time here, though. But I want to make sure that I give a little bit of a good little spotlight here for you. So Activor, can you give us, what are you working on? Any shout outs that you want to give to your mom and dad? Are they going to listen to this show? And you got to make sure you say a little bit, about how you love them and how they raised you to be a good human. Tell us what are your, who inspired you to, like, play this game, those kind of things.
Well, I mean, I've got to say, of course, I've got to shout out and thank my alliance mates in Shadow Cartel, but I also want to shout out everybody that we fight against. This game wouldn't be a lot of fun without the other side, right? Without conflict, without people to blow up and people that want to blow us up. So everybody that's ever killed me, everybody that I've ever killed in game, thank you. And let's keep fighting. Let's keep building stuff. Let's keep blowing it up, and just let's keep fighting in the game.
Awesome. Is there anything that you're currently working on? Any projects? Any websites that you want to throw out there? Things that you're currently passionate about inside of the game?
Just say that we're recruiting, of course. Shadow is recruiting, but we're recruiting corps. So our project, I guess, is to particularly grow our US time zone. So if you're active in PvP and are interested in the low sec life, then you can find our channel at the Shadow Cartel public in-game, or you can just ping me, Activor Faust, and I can direct you to a helpful recruiter.
Awesome. Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
We will put that all into. Make sure to. I'll talk to you after this, of course, in DMs and stuff, and we'll get all that information, and we'll put that into the show notes for everybody to kind of go check out. But yeah, thanks for coming on here. And, definitely, I have to say that I have my respective Shadow Cartel has always been actually very good. Like, you guys did kick us out of Hain, like, many, 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 many years ago, but we deserved it. We didn't live there anymore. So, but I've always had great interactions with Shadow Cartel, and even when you guys come and beat the shit out of us, it's, well respected. It's just, we're just gonna look for your one ship that we can blow up.
All part of the game.
Right? Is that the shiny ship? Get it! All right, we lost the whole fleet, but we killed that one shiny ship. It was very cool. So thank you so much for coming on. And
I just wanted to say it was a pleasure meeting you in Iceland, talking about Tech 2 production, and it's just always something special when we get an OG, on the show, like someone who's been here from day one. It's just the numbers are falling. It's
man.
So when we get an opportunity to talk to someone, it's special. So thank you.
It's been good to be here. Thanks for inviting me, guys, and I'll see you hope to see you in Reykjavik in
already have my ticket spot. Like, yep, the day too. One. My wife looked at me and she goes, "All right, so we're buying tickets," and I was like, "Yep." I love that. My wife is like, she's not a huge Eve player, but she's enough that she's like, dude, going to Iceland and hanging out with a bunch of Eve nerds is the coolest thing.
Yeah, my fiance loves Iceland, so it's not hard to get her over there. She'll be over there next year. So nice. I'll see you again.
That's awesome.
Great stuff. Thanks all.
Awesome. Thank you all for watching, and have a great night.
Good night, everybody.